Hello, this is John Smith with Punk Rock Politics. Welcome to another episode of Punk Rock Politics. We're going to look at what Bernie Sanders had to say on March 25th, 2020, in response to what the Republicans were putting forth in their coronavirus stimulus package or relief package, whatever you want to call it, bailout. So we're going to take a look at it and then we're going to discuss. So here's Senator Bernie Sanders on the floor of the Senate, where he's an independent senator. He's also obviously a presidential candidate, and let's see what he has to say.
Mr. President, let me be very honest and tell you that there is much in this bill, and we have not yet seen the printout yet, that I am concerned about. I am especially concerned that the administration will be able to expend $500 billion in virtually any way they want, any corporation they want, with virtually no strings attached. The American people, at a time of massive income and wealth inequality, do not want more corporate welfare, and they do not want policies which will allow corporations, in some cases, to receive loans or grants and then do stock buybacks to enrich their stockholders, provide dividends, or maybe raise the compensation benefits of their already wealthy CEOs. What the American people want right now is for us to use our taxpayer dollar in every way that we can to protect the working families of this country, to protect the middle class, to protect the 50% of our people who are living paycheck to paycheck. And as we speak tonight, half of our people in this country, in the richest country in the history of the world, are living paycheck to paycheck. And they wake up in the morning and they're saying, you know what, I can barely make it on the paycheck that I got because I'm making 12, 13, 14 bucks an hour, and now that paycheck has stopped. How am I going to pay my rent? How am I going to put food on the table for my kids? How am I going to make sure that the lights remain on? How am I going to pay my student debt? How am I going to pay my credit card debt? Somebody in the family gets sick. How am I going to pay that? Now, this bill has been worked on extensively in the last few days. There are elements in it that, in my view, are positive. Don't go far enough by any means. But one of the things this bill does do is provide the largest expansion of unemployment benefits in history, expending about $250 billion of federal funds. And what it does, importantly, the bill understands that for all kinds of absurd reasons having to do with Republican attacks on workers for many years, fewer than 50% of American workers today are eligible for unemployment benefits. What this bill does is says, rightly so, that in the midst of this terrible economic crisis where some people, nobody knows, where some economists are estimating that by June, the end of next quarter, unemployment could be 20 or 30%, what this bill does say is that whether or not you are eligible for unemployment today, you're going to get unemployment compensation. And that means many of the gig workers, people who drive Uber cars, many of the waitresses and waiters who make starvation minimum wages, many so-called independent contractors, they will be eligible for the extended unemployment benefit. That is exactly the right thing. And the other thing that this bill does, which is right, is it says, okay, we are in the midst of a horrific crisis, unprecedented in modern American history. So not only are you going to get your regular unemployment benefits, we're going to add another $600 a week to it.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that. When I get more supporters, I'll be able to get rid of those commercials and start paying for a lot of different things I need. We're going to skip past this, obviously. Okay. And get back to Bernie.
And now I find that some of my Republican colleagues are very distressed. They're very upset that somebody who's making 10, 12 bucks an hour might end up with a paycheck for 4 months. more than they received last week. Oh my God, the universe is collapsing. Imagine that. Somebody who's making $12 an hour, now like the rest of us, faces an unprecedented economic crisis with the $600 on top of their regular unemployment check, might be making a few bucks more for 4 months. Oh my word! Will the universe survive? How absurd and wrong is that? What kind of value system is that? Meanwhile, these very same folks had no problem a couple of years ago voting for $1 trillion in tax breaks for billionaires and large profitable corporations. Not a problem. But when it comes to low-income workers in the midst of a terrible crisis, maybe some of them earning or having more money than they previously made, oh my word, we got to strip that out. Got to tell those poor people that no matter what. By the way, when the
Sorry, probably a lot of people using the internet.
McConnell bill first came up, unbelievably, and I know many Republicans objected to this. They were saying that, well, we want to give whatever it was, $1,000 or $1,200, but poor people should get less. You see, because poor people are down here, they don't eat, they don't pay rent, they don't go to the doctor, they're somehow inferior because they're poor, we're going to give them less. Well, that was addressed. Now everybody is going to get the $1,200. But some of my Republican friends still have not given up on the need to punish the poor and working people. You haven't raised the minimum wage in 10 years. Minimum wage should be at least $15 an hour. You haven't done that. You've cut program after program after program, and now, horror of horrors, for 4 months, workers might be earning a few bucks more than they otherwise went. Well, needless to say, this is an amendment that is coming up. I don't think it's going to go very far. And if it does go far, I will introduce an amendment to deal with the corporate welfare, the $500 billion in corporate welfare, which is, to me, a very serious problem. But I do not think they're going to get the 60 votes, and that will be the end of it. Mr. President, this bill also includes some $250 billion in one-time checks of $1,200 for adults and $500 for kids. Now, I have a couple of concerns there. Number one, I have believed that in the midst of this unprecedented crisis, that we should make this a monthly benefit, not a one-time benefit. And depending on what happens, and I expect very much that this Congress will be reconvening, because I think this coronavirus 3, the bill we're on right now, is going to be superseded by a coronavirus 4, because my strong guess is this does not go far enough. But the bill does include a $1,200 check for adults, $500 for kids. That will help in the short term. We've got to do a lot better than that. As many of you know, in countries around the world, UK, Denmark, other countries, the approach that they are taking, which makes sense to me, is to basically say to employers, if you keep your workers on the job, even if they're not working right now, we will pay, in the UK case, 80% of their salary. Other countries a bit higher. I think that is the direction we should have gone. This is a little bit more convoluted. But what we do here is give $367 billion in loans to small businesses, and those loans could be forgiven if those small businesses don't lay off workers. And I think for a variety of reasons, that is exactly the right thing to do. The goal right now is to stabilize the economy by telling workers that they will have their jobs when they come back, when this thing is over, and that in the meantime, they will have all or most of their income. That is my preferred approach. This bill provides $150 billion to states and cities. And I can tell you that in Vermont, and I'm sure in every other state in this country, states and cities are hurting because we all know there has been a major decline in tax revenue. And that is an important thing to do because, by the way, in the midst of this crisis, a lot of the responsibility is going to fall on local and state government. And one of the concerns of many that I have about this bill is that in the best of times, this bill requires an enormous amount of work by the federal, state, and local governments. How do you get all these unemployment checks out? How do you deal with all of these small businesses who may apply for these loans? This is hard stuff, and it becomes even more difficult when so many workers who work for local and state government are not coming into work because of the coronavirus. And one of the issues that we are going to have to focus on big time is the implementation. If anyone thinks just passing this bill tomorrow everything is going to flow smoothly, you are terribly mistaken. This is a complicated, multifaceted bill, and it is going to take an enormous amount of work to make sure that the money goes where it should go in a cost-effective way. This bill does a lot of other things as well that I think will help the American economy. So to conclude, Mr. President, this is not the bill that I would have written. Frankly, I don't think it's the bill that most Americans would have written. I think most Americans are very, very apprehensive that 1/4 of this bill is going to go to large corporations with very little accountability. And in a political system, let me make the radical suggestion that we have a president of the United States who may end up targeting some of this money to states that he needs to win. So this bill has some good things. It has some issues of real concern. But one thing we must not do is to punish low-income workers who might get a few bucks more than they previously earned. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Mr. President,
Senator from Nebraska.
I've just listened to the senator from Vermont's speech, and there's obviously a lot we don't agree on in life and policy, politics, and economics. He caricatured the entire purpose of this amendment tonight. The purpose of this amendment tonight is to affirm work under his vision. I don't know exactly where he thinks the workers who stock shelves and drive trucks right now would come from, because he made an argument about government subsidies that would be on a permanent basis higher than the wages of all those jobs. So I don't understand how his economic system would ever actually work, but I'd actually like to just praise him here. Two things. One, he said something that the politicians usually don't say. Usually when people are going to vote for something, they say the bill's salvific and utopian and going to do everything right. And if they're going to vote against something, they say it's the worst thing that's ever been written. And Senator Sanders just said that this bill has a lot in it. It's big, it's clunky, we're in the middle of a national emergency, and there's some good and there's some bad in it, and he's going to vote for it. I also believe this bill is big and clunky and stinky. There's a lot that's broken in it. There's some that's good and urgent and necessary and important, and there's a lot that's bad and poorly thought out and not going to be implemented very effectively. And on that, I'm also inclined to vote for it. So I appreciate his candor in admitting that this is kind of a big crap sandwich. But in addition, I want to praise the senator from Vermont for his candor in saying something that I totally oppose, but I appreciate his integrity and honesty in admitting it. He said, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, sir, please, he said he wishes the $1,200 monthly payment would be made, or the $1,200 emergency payment would be made monthly and permanent. Is that right?
No, not permanent, but during the crisis, yes.
Okay, that's helpful clarification. You were saying a lot of different things, and I thought you were arguing for a UBI of 14 grand. So I just wanted to clarify that point, but I appreciate the fact that you believe a lot of things very differently. The senator believes, speaking in the third person, a lot of things very differently than I do, but he argues forcefully for his positions. And I think that this body would benefit from more people who spoke as bluntly and directly as the senator from Vermont. I hope his positions are voted down again and again and again and again, but I appreciate the way he argues for his positions. Thank you, Mr. President.
Wow. Okay. All right. So you heard from Senator Bernie Sanders, and I don't want to sound like I don't know who that last person was. I recognize his face. Excuse me, I'm getting a drink here. I do recognize the other senator's face, but I can't recall his name at the moment. But I do appreciate the fact that he doesn't agree with everything Sanders is saying, or he says he doesn't agree with a lot of what he's saying, but he appreciates his honesty, candor, and his passion for fighting for the American people. Now, I disagree, and I think that, I have an issue with UBI where I quite frankly have to dig more into it It seems to help in a lot of like Norwegian countries and other places around the world, especially in Western Europe. But it does prop up the capitalist system. So I don't want to get into how I feel about extending UBI. I think which is universal basic income. I do think it should definitely at least be extended, during the crisis for everyone, literally everyone within our borders. But I don't believe that. I'm not going to get into that now. But let's take apart some of what Bernie Sanders said. He said for years the GOP has been fighting against increasing the minimum wage. 10 years since there's been a minimum wage increase. Now that also could go. That could be blamed on the Democrats as well, but it's not. It's something that they did do when they had power during the Obama administration and when they had the full Congress. It wasn't enough, and I don't agree with Bernie Sanders that we should have a $15 minimum wage. I think we should have at least a $25 to $30 minimum wage. Now, I know what the corporate media and people are telling you, but think about it. If you make $25 or $30 an hour and work 8 hours a day, let's just do 30 for simple purposes, right? So each hour, you got 8 hours, 30, 60, 90, 120. Ooh. So you're talking about if you work 8 hours a day, making a whole $240. Is that a lot of money to you? Does that give you some kind of lavish, extravagant lifestyle? Absolutely not. And you could argue that's not enough money. But simply put, 15 is better than what it is now, which I think the federal minimum wage is something like, it's terrible. It's like $10.25, and it's low. The minimum wage across different states is all kinds of nonsense. So federal minimum wage is just for federal employees. So there's so much to unpack. But again, the last guy's point was important, and I didn't realize he spoke. I watched most of the video. I watched a separate video on C-SPAN, but I didn't see that part. But that was important. It's the reason a lot of people like Bernie Sanders is because he's honest, he's forceful, and he even says, though I'm voting for this bill, this is not the bill I would have put forth. Now, when he talks about the bill being, 25%, he's unfortunately not discussing the part where there's tons of trillions of dollars taxpayer dollars being used through the Fed to prop up corporations, even more than is being reported. This was during the breakdown of this bill, so like he said, it's a massive bill and there's a lot to go through, but that's on purpose to confuse people. And there's a crisis, so they're trying to get a bunch of money to a bunch of wealthy corporations and people in a time of crisis who shouldn't get anything. So for some weird reason, if you're a large corporation, you don't have to keep your employees on. But if you're a small business, your loans are only forgiven if you keep your workers on. That makes no sense. It should be the other way around. Small businesses who are just starting or only have a few employees and aren't essential won't be able to work. So how they could lose their business. So this allows big corporations to come in and eat up all the small guys, buy up their businesses, or take them over in some cases as they go into debt, and maybe not even give them enough to get out of debt, or even to make the profit they deserve for all the hard work of years before they even make a profit. So it's a little ridiculous, to say the least, what's going on. Now, when we talk about, when Sanders was talking about Mitch McConnell's original bill and how they wanted to make all this money for corporations be secretive, that's obviously nonsensical and ridiculous and absurd and corrupt, and these people need to be held to account. What else needs to be addressed? God, like you said, there's barely any oversight for these, and they fought for more oversight, but it's still a joke having a 5-person panel that's super underfunded that can only complain about $4.25 trillion after it's given out and it's too late, and they have no subpoena power, so they can't call these people into Congress to testify legally and see what they did or if it was ethical or corrupt or illegal. The whole thing is absurd. So Bernie Sanders is right on here, and during the midst of the crisis, he was just trying to get people money. I believe he didn't touch on how truly disgusted he was with some of this bill. And I hope that he's more disgusted than he alluded to, because I am, and you should be. So one of my previous videos, a few videos back, was talking about this with David Dayen's articles in the American Prospect, I believe it is, and it's just nonsensical. Like he said, "Oh my Lord, the world is falling apart," or if working people actually get a few extra bucks in their pocket, they actually wanted to give poor people less money. So you give poor people more money. The whole thing is absurd. And the fact that we don't have Medicare for all during this crisis is just pitiful. What Joe Biden's saying on the matter is disgusting. The next video is going to talk about Joe Biden's numerous claims of sexual assault, and we're going to play a very disturbing video of one of the people that he essentially forcibly, I don't know how to say it without being grotesque, he entered her vagina with his hand and threatened her. When you hear the testimony, you'll be shocked. And more people clearly voted for Bernie Sanders, and this whole thing has been a rigged situation. And I did prior videos on it, and there's tons more evidence than I was able to cover with all the different news coming out and everything going on. But we have a serious situation, and Bernie Sanders is clearly leading in response to the coronavirus and our massive income inequality. As he says, 50% of employees are living paycheck to paycheck. So they're not going to get payments from that. One of those previous videos I did in reading those articles in the Prospect, you're talking about people not getting money for maybe 3 to 5 months. What are they going to do in the meantime? Starve to death? Not have enough soap and hand sanitizer to stop them from getting COVID-19 and giving it to other people? What are people in jail going to do? They're going to get sick. What are the prison guards and wardens going to do? They're going to get sick. What are they going to do? Spread it all over the place. What are undocumented workers and immigrants going to do? They're going to get it. They need food. They need to be healthy. They need to not spread it. So even if you're somebody who for some reason believes that these people are less or subhuman, like Bernie Sanders is saying, these working class people, these poor people, whether they be documented or not, first of all, you need to learn your history and understand that these people come here because of U.S. foreign policy, because of us overthrowing democratically elected governments, and having coups, because of us using sanctions, as I discussed in my last video, and hurting these people all so the very wealthy few and politicians can benefit. It's absurd. So Bernie Sanders is right on here. This bill has a lot of nonsense in it, and it doesn't really help, and it's not enough money, and it doesn't help the people that really need help, and it's not going to do it soon enough. So Bernie Sanders is absolutely right. We need to extend these payments. We need to increase them to at least $2,000 per person, every single person in America. We can establish if you make over $300,000 or $500,000 a year, you pay back next year in taxes. You give that money back, so we can just give it to everybody. We should not be going on 2018 tax returns, because how? First of all, your economic situation or your business or your job could have changed, and second of all, so could your address. So how are we going to figure out sending out all these checks? The whole thing is a joke, and it's meant to stall this system. And I guess they're hoping that, I don't know what they're hoping, but there's already a bunch of people going on strike, rightfully so, and I hope you stand in solidarity with them and support the workers that are being put in harm's way by corporations that are making massive profits while all of us, the vast majority of us, suffer. So thanks for watching. Please support Punk Rock Politics. Go to patreon.com/punkrockpolitics and become a patron today. Make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel. Double click and make sure you get the bells around the parentheses around the bell, so you get updates, because if not, you won't get updates, or you won't get many updates of my new videos. And yeah, please become a patron at patreon.com/punkrockpolitics and support Punk Rock Politics so I can grow the channel, have more guests on, and give you all kinds of great stuff, and have videos popping up. When I read an article, it'll be on the screen, and all of this stuff costs time and money, so I need some help. I hope you guys are staying safe out there, guys and gals, and everybody else. Please stay safe. Please practice social distancing. Please wash your hands as much as possible. Clean all of your hard surfaces as much as possible, especially door handles and stuff like that, even in your own house. Stay safe. Try not to put anybody at risk if they are older or have a immune issue. Like I'm around my parents and they are older and have some health issues, so I'm very concerned about giving it to them. I want to give back to my community. I want to help more, but I'm afraid by going out, I can contract the disease and give it to them. Be very safe. Try to limit your interactions. I know it's lonely, but hopefully I could provide some solace in this time and give you some information as to what's going on. You can still call your senators, your congressmen and congresswomen. You can call the White House. You can call your local government, your county government, your state government, and demand action on these issues. You can call your local representatives in the state house and state senate. They're called different things, but that's essentially what they are in different states. But there's the state Congress. Call your governor. Fight for Americans. Fight for the vast majority of us. Fight for the 99% and fight against the 1%. Thanks for joining Punk Rock Politics. Stay safe out there. Good night.